So we have now a whole set of our great leaders in the field of neural computation joining us here in the front stage and giving some perspectives. Maybe we can start with Gary.
All right. Yeah, so can I connect to the screen here?
Oh,
Okay. Maybe Andrea's and Jimmy's slides. That work? See, I guess I don't need to show. Oh, okay. Okay,
hold on.
never mind. So I was the director of the TDLC, and I just want to give a tiny bit of history.
You can share now.
What?
You can share now.
I can share now. Okay. I texted you or emailed you hours ago.
Operate one. Operate one.
Yeah, when you send an email to Gary, you get a reply says, sorry, my inbox is full with 1,000 messages.
Okay. I think the remote people do that. Okay, anyway, yeah, so our goal, and I have the t-shirt with the same thing on it. Our goal was to understand the role of time and timing in learning from the synaptic scale up to the month scale in spacing and learning. And in the beginning, I stayed up all night writing the final version of the proposal. And it wouldn't have happened at all if Andrea hadn't shown up with Greek food and worked all night with me. I sometimes say we spent the night together, but that is. So then in 2005, we had our first site visit, and in 2018, Andrea included the Centers in Global Science of Learning Network launched with others in the spring of 2019. One of the main drivers of how this all worked was the idea of the network of networks. So we had several different research networks. Penn was the kind of model for that, the Perceptual Expertise Network, and we created 3 more to generate cooperative science. So it's unlike the blind man and the elephant, we all tried to see the elephant from the same bunch of different perspectives. And that worked a lot. These are lines representing collaborations between researchers in the center. And 2011, this is how it worked. So that was pretty amazing. The results were over 600 papers, major advances in learning, memory, active learning, optimal control, BCI, etc. Javier Mabellin and Marni Bartlett, Samotion, sold to Apple. Emma Todoros Mujoko was commercialized, bought by DeepMind. It's a simulator for physical interaction in the real world. It's used by roboticists worldwide. April Benesich launched Rap Baby. Leon Chukowski launched BrainLeap, and Terry Snowski and Barbara Oakley's Coursera on learning how to learn had over 4.1 million students taught.
6
And
million.
I actually recommend this to my classes when they in my syllabus. We had a lot of hundreds of trainees, many of whom are now faculty at various places. We're everywhere. We're like, and
Wait a second. Was John Iverson a trainee or a faculty?
he was
Oh, it started as
just a trainee,
project site.
and he's going to be speaking later today. There he is. Yeah, so Laura Rangel in particular, faculty here in cognitive science. Yeah, and Priscanon was my student. And one poem we always closed with, I wrote one night, staying up all night with Jenny and Andrea. And now.
Wait a
Andrea-
second, Did you read the poem first? Come on. That was it passed too fast.
Sorry, okay. So now Andrea's gonna talk about the Global Science of Learning Network.
So there were 6 of the science and learning centers in the US that were funded by the NSF. And at the end, there was a big political storm. And so, they were thinking of canceling the science of learning program. Gary and I and Terry actually made a trip to the White House and talked to the Office of Science and Technology Policy. And then thereafter, we were invited to do a congressional briefing to try to, let Congress know how important science of learning was and how education should be based on something that is sound. And anyway, thereafter, we were supposed to get a synthesis center, but that didn't happen. But what they did do was launch a call for several networks. Now, mind you, when we first got our center, we had to really push the idea of networks, and they really wanted us to have some linear top-down organization, but then NSF took this on as their own idea of networks, and it sort of blossomed. Meanwhile, though, in trying to keep the science of learning centers and sort of the brain of science of learning together, I held a meeting that was funded by NSF in 2018 and included a bunch of people from here. And we launched the Global Science of Learning. From there, I partnered with philanthropists and policymakers in DC, and we launched in 2019 during the pandemic Global Science of Learning Education Network. Never waste a good crisis, and so it was the right time for that. People really cared. Children were falling asleep at the desk, and no one knew how to deliver digital information. And so now that network has grown to 900 members, scientists, policymakers, educators, and philanthropists across 66 countries. It's based on the idea that we should be bringing together people from all disciplines. I like to always give a nod to Suzanne Lim, even though we felt a little tortured at the time. She was an amazing program director, and she just retired one day before the shutdown, and her retirement did go through. I thought they weren't gonna let her. So anyway, the whole idea was to really cross disciplines, not just cognitive science or cognitive neuroscience or psychology and education, but to really dip into everything. And I'd like to tell people that, you know, AI, they're like, how do we deal with AI and the science of learning? It's like, AI is the science of learning, folks. These are learning algorithms. You know, we need to think more deeply about, you know, really how all the disciplines tie together.
It's actually the engineering of learning.
Yes. Exactly, but engineering's a science, right? Last time I checked, but maybe not. Anyway, and so another thing that we branched off to, Christine Laguerre and I at UT Austin, was to start an NSF ExcelNet. We got a couple $1 million from NSF to start a network of networks to accelerate cultures of learning. One thing I was really worried about with science of learning was that people would decide what's good for each community and sort of say, this is how learning best proceeds, and you in all these different countries should do this. And if we sort of wake up and smell the roses, there are a lot of countries that are doing much better than we are at learning. And we can actually learn from these other countries, and we can take a community-based approach. And so we decided to start with just one topic in the science of learning. And to take the community-based approach, we teamed now with Global Science of Learning, Center for Applied Cognitive Science, Global Communities, which is a disaster relief organization that has community offices all over the world, and Mindset, which is an ed tech hub. And so we decided our initial focus would be on self-regulation. If you haven't noticed, that could be one of the biggest problems in the world right now, is people's inability to regulate themselves. And so no one's laughing.
You're talking about.
What? No one's laughing, I'm concerned. Anyway, and so from there also, another offshoot of the center, Terry Jung and I started the early education assessment, healthy child and early child development study that we just started actually, and Jenny and Eric Leonardis and Tim Brown are collaborating, where we're trying to look at, it was really a dream that we had when we were in TDLC, that we could actually have a classroom where we could have video, audio, autonomic nervous system sensors, some neural data, and get in real time what children are doing in a classroom. So Harry and I have a preschool classroom and a prescribed curriculum to try to really understand how these systems are coordinating in the service of learning and regulation in the classroom. And so that's kind of brand new. And I just wanted to thank you. And this is Rats and Robots, which was one of my favorite projects that ended up being a Brain Initiative Award too during the center era, which was a collaboration with Janet Wiles' lab at University of Queensland in Australia. And she's been a big friend of INC's over the years too. So I want to give a big shout out. So anyway, thank you. Thank you. Like, well, we have an engineer. Yeah.
No, scientist.
Great, thanks. I'm just going to talk a couple minutes about some other projects ongoing. So this is a slide made by Sabatier, who is leading our project for AI powered personalized learning, and a big team. You'll notice Andrea's on here, Amy Iguchi's on here, and so this is a project that I've joined, and I'm really pushing this forward again to improve education using AI. In particular, I am benefiting from this project from INC in an indirect way. So when Apple brought Emotion, Marni was on a project and she recommended my group to take over that project involving facial expression recognition. And so I had a graduate student who did for their thesis pain recognition using facial expression recognition. And now I have another graduate student working on facial expression recognition. And that's what we're integrating into this AI education system. So the system will be able to see the student's facial expressions and use that to integrate with all the rest of the context and text to be more aware of their state. So thank you, Marni. Thank you, INC, for that. And the other way that my lab has, let's see, so, Gary, how do I get it to? There, from here. The other way that my lab has benefited greatly from INC and the TDLC is through EEG. We didn't do any EEG before TDLC and INC. And now we have quite a few different projects. This is our latest one where we're actually interpreting. Here we're interpreting what people are looking at from their EEG. So people are looking at the thing on the left, and then the reconstruction that we reconstruct is on the right. So obviously it's not a perfect reconstruction, but it does get a lot of the features, which is actually quite surprising from EEG. Yeah, so thank you to INC. we are using the equipment originally bought from TDLC in setting up, actually, these aren't our data, these are public data, but our expertise were developed using INC, TDLC resources. So thank you.
Wow.
Here on behalf of the SCCN team, and I think this is where a lot of the story began at SCCN. And maybe Scott can comment on, what this figure is.
Yeah, so this is one of the first papers that came out of the effort over at with Terry's lab at SOC to try to make something of the independent component analysis that Tony Bell had developed such an algorithm for, and Tony and Terry have published. And I was very fortunate to hear about it just before that, to be trying to be interested in it, and immediately it seemed to give us a lot more information about what was going on at the particle level from the surface to scale EG. And so we went after event-related data that we got from Jean Thompson and her student Marissa Westerfeld, and started dividing up what happened after you saw some sort of visual stimulus in this experiment into your EG. And we realized there was a sort of cornucopia of information about all different sources in different places in the cortex and how they were interacting and so on. And that sent us on the road with the fortunate injection of enthusiasm and funding from Gary Swartz, brokered by Terry, on the path of studying this for the next 20 years or so, and out of which a lot of things have come, and I think will continue.
And just a couple of slides about what went after, in particular, our EG Lab software now, and it's more than 25 years. So it started with Scott in Terry's lab, 1997, with the ICA toolbox. And then I arrived in Terry's lab in 2000. And so I helped Scott, and we put together his package that became very popular. Instantaneously popular for I think three reasons. First, timing. There's just nothing else at that time. Second, new methods based on ICA and new ideas. And third, robust. We're very much into, even in these days, building very robust tools that just work, and also we're experimentalists. So this wasn't like a software design for other white software people. We have a couple of numbers. We had more than 1 million downloads, about 20,000 people on our diffusion list. For our grant, we computed that I think the research supported, I think, about $500 million of research, because we looked at all the NIH grants that were publishing papers that cited the software. This is a more recent analysis that shows that even after 25 years, we're still in the top. It is, changing with Python and or MATLAB, and MATLAB is waiting, but we're still very much on the top of this is of the published paper with EG, and this is not published by us, so you can trust it more than it was. And finally, very recently, we set up this new competition on EEG and deep learning with Terry, Scott, and many others. And it was picked up by Van der Kuhn and Meta. So we treated it. We had more than 1,200 teams around the world applying to this EEG competition. It's the biggest competition in EEG that ever was. And so we were, and it's just finished last week. We selected our winner, and so we're going to invite them to NeurIPS. So yeah, this is the nutshell.
What was the challenge that they had to do?
The challenge for the competition is to predict, there are two challenges. First one is to predict reaction time. This is easy challenge. Hard one is to predict psychopathology. This was a hard challenge. And one of the surprises that it's how hard it is to predict psychopathology. You think, it's like something super easy, but people were barely above chance. So that teaches us a lot about, future model, how we can do collect data and qualitative data, etc.
Predicted personality this much about chance and basis.
Yeah, but of course, most of the 1,200 teams not only didn't use our coding of events, but didn't even pay any attention to events in the data. They just treated it as series of numbers, which shows that how siloed advances can be and training is in the different areas, so that they were using brain data, but they paid no attention to the brain. They were using experience data in a psychological sense, but they paid no attention to what the subjects were experiencing. And so they were just using the engineering methods or the neural network methods to try to get something. And as a result, I'm not surprised that it wasn't that successful.
Who's next?
I can go next.
Yes, please go.
Hello, I'm Gola, and I don't have slides, so I can capture your attention a little bit better. As I joined SCCN, and I have seen at the end of 2014, I came to work here on the EEG data, mostly on the prediction of the attentional decline with aging. That was my PhD program. But I also, like 1 year later, I got interested in something what was a side project. And thanks to support of Scott and other people, the side project turned into over 120 papers and a new diagnosis in the ICD-11, the International Classification of Disorder, published by the World Health Organization in 2022. What was it about? It was about behavioral addictions, about something what public was interested in. Mainly, is it possible to get addicted, for example, social media or public. There was no answer for this question in 2013 when African Psychiatric Association was publishing the previous classification of diagnosis and DSM-5, because there was no neuroscience data on that. We didn't know what is the mechanism. So I focused on those compulsive sexual behaviors, and within 10 years, we have figured out what are those neural mechanisms, what does it resemble. We had neural markers of those issues, and thanks to that, the World Health Organization was able to recognize it as an entity and as a new diagnosis. And right now, I'm using we are using the methods of machine learning, AI, to not only identify those biomarkers, but also to be able to predict the outcome of treatment, predict the severity of symptoms, And recently, based on all the MRI data collected over 350 individuals with this disorder, we were able, using connectome-based predictive modeling, find the markers of prediction also for the severity of symptom and the outcome of treatment. Right now, we also identify the Chiba biomarkers, scale up those studies, and we are also scaling those methods to new issues like computer gaming disorder, or for example, problematic social media use. And basically, this is how we can use neuroscience computational methods to help people who are struggling with new technologies. We use new technologies to help those who struggle. So briefly, that's it, and thank you.
That was it for the source of computational neuroscience, or and Tzyy-Ping, want to say anything else or more? We still have time. We have some more time, yes.
Well, I prepared a few slides for listen to Terry's talk, so I'm listening because that relates to the perspective instead of perspective. But okay. Terry mentions Neuro AI, and that's basically this emergence in the disciplinary field that combines neuroscience and artificial intelligence, or AI, to enhance our understanding of both domains. Okay, the concept, of course, involves bidirectional interactions. One is to use the AI technology to model and analyze neural signals, and the other side is trying to apply insights from neuroscience to improve AI systems. So I'm going to focus on trying to leverage AI tools to analyze and interpret and models neural signals. So this is actually the first time I got the idea from Terry. This is predated Neuro AI term, and back to 2019. So I was invited to this meetings organized by Terry. You can see that image. If you're interested, you can actually go online and find the 4 hours of recordings on YouTube. Still active. Terry actually just mentions, the talk given by the professors DiCarlo. How to pronounce this name? DiCarlo, right? DiCarlo of MIT, and that's a very impressive talk. So that really inspires my research since then. Particularly, I think that key advantage of combining these two fields are following. One is, already mentioned, to leverage neuroscience know-how to improve or to actually invent AI models. So give you some examples, for instance, based on the physical structures of our human brains, and there's a lot of layered AI models being developed in the past, I would say, 10, 20 years. And also the human behavior inspired, the interaction inspired many different learning algorithms, for instance, memory, attention, etc. Okay, so I'm not going to go into details. And then the second part is talking about how to leverage AI tools, okay, to analyze, for instance, our data. First, that can accelerate neuroscience research. Go without saying. Second is to understand human cognition and intelligence. In fact, AI, Terry just mentioned some examples, for instance, how AI can help us better understand the sensory motor and working memory, right? And then from my perspective, because I'm a neuroengineer, well, actually, Terry has difficult time finding physicists in the audience. I hope I'm not only engineer here, okay? So I'm talking about brain-computer interfaces. So AI definitely can enhance brain-computer interfaces, BCIs. And also last but not least, personalized medicine. I think that will benefit from this, AI tools. So for those people who are not familiar with BCIs, you can see it on the left. And the goal of brain-computer interface is trying to use invasive, non-invasive BCIs to assist, augment, or repair human cognitive or sensory motor functions. And also adaptive decoders that learn user states. And the application you can find nowadays in neuromodulations, cognitive affective monitoring, or assistant controls. On the right, you can see very briefly, you use neuroimaging modalities, and on the top right, and then you can use time domain analysis, and you can extract features to do the decoding, and you can also convert into control commands. So lower half is probably most people know about BCIs, the brain perceptions, recognitions, and actually in the middle, brain regulations or modulations, that's more recent. So in fact, the next slide shows the progressions of BCI in the past, I would say 30 years. You can see from 1.0 all the way to 3.0. Nowadays, we're talking about the interactions and also combining perceptions, brain perceptions, brain stimulations, and the command controls. So when I get into this generation, third generations since 2024. Okay. So we're talking about how to create symbiotic human AI systems. So that's the interaction between humans and AI. I'm not going to go into the details. And this is a comparison between what is humans and AI collaborations, and also humans and AI symbiosis. So give you the bottom line at buttons, you can see human AI collaborations talking about working with AI, and humans AI symbiosis is talking about involved with AI. So jointly learn from and adapted to AI. Okay, so that's the things I think I will be working on for the past, I would say, 10, 20 years. This is one of examples. My students sit over there at home trying to create this human AI systems. And not going to go into details. And the other thing is we're trying to develop large EEG models. I think Shushen is over there, and collaborating with Foxconn in Taiwan. They provide all the computing resources, and also we work with Arnaud to compile a data set, and working with Yingwu, and she's preparing the demos now, and she is in charge of downstream applications, and we have Foxconn people and me working on the architectures and learning. Okay, so that's about it. Okay.
Thank you. So next we have Jean-Marc. Jean-Marc.
Thanks. Well, I'll be quick. I don't have slides either. And I'm a newcomer here, so I just arrived a few months ago. So I'll just tell you what we're doing now and invite collaborations. So we have three posts. I'm an old timer, but I came back here and I'm sort of reborn. So 3 projects, four projects. We have posters at SFN if you're interested. The first one is actually showing that marmosets have spindles that travel during sleep, and we have a poster on that. So you can see these traveling waves also in marmosets. A second project about spatial navigation in very, very large spaces. So there is this, basic knowledge that a hippocampus cell has a place field somewhere in an environment when the rat walks around. And we showed a couple of years ago, 3 years ago, that when you have that environment becoming larger and larger and larger, the place field increases, and then splits, and then increases again, and then splits again. So the single cell now has multiple place fields in a very large environment. And that's, to us, is a fundamental thing. It's really the way we code for stimuli in the cognitive domain, right? Away from perception. So a very multi-scale and multi-field coding for space. And so we'll be doing this as soon as my lab is settled and we have the space to run the rats. We'll have rats running around with a wireless device and we'll report from these place cells and study the coding. And then the third project, again, poster at SFN, is what happens during sleep and during shock waves, this phenomenon of reactivation, memory consolidation. And then a student of mine is trying to, from just the shock waves alone, to try to guess what is the neural network underlying the emission of these shock waves. So guess the anatomy, functional anatomy from the spike train data that we record from the rats using mathematical concepts and AI. And then the last one, which I just started getting interested in, is NeuroAI, as TP mentioned. So Terry and I organized a NSF-sponsored workshop a few months ago, and inviting all the very famous people in the field to try and work out what is NeuroAI, what is the future of NeuroAI, and so on. And my personal interest is asking the question as to whether robots or computers can or should have emotions. So that's really should we really start studying emotions in computers and AI in general? Not human emotions, computer and robot emotions that are different. And so, of course, the answer is yes. And so I'm starting looking into that and trying to propose actually ways of doing it using the brain as an inspiration. Of course, that's the idea. Right. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so this is we're getting to the final exciting phase of our panel session here. We have this great translation from academic exercises to industry, and we have several startups that came out of IC, and so we're very delighted to have Taewon Lee that will give us a few perspectives on what has happened there and how neural computation has made major advances in the field.
Thanks, good. Okay, well, great to be here. Great to see you, Terry. Actually, great to see a lot of people that I remember from the INC and SALT days, like Scott, Tzyy-Ping, Marni, and so on. Brings back a lot of memory, actually. And I think it was in 96, no, 97, that I came to Terry's lab. I forgot now what year it was, but anyway, I think you call it the area of golden age or something in your book, right?
Tony Bell was there.
Yeah.
Peter Dan.
And we published so many ICA papers that I stopped counting after 100 or so, right? But anyway, there's a lot of great stuff happening. And so in the time between SOC and INC, we started a company called SoftMax with Tzyy-Ping, Scott. Sorry?
1998.
98, okay, that's when we incorporated, that's correct, yes. But at that time, we knew we were going to do something about ICA, but we didn't really know what exact applications we were going to pursue. And although EEG Lab and other applications came out, but with softmax, we focus actually on speech. And so the idea was to separate speech from noise, and that found some applications. And in 2007, that's when Qualcomm acquired softmax. So then I was part of Qualcomm then, became part of Qualcomm then. So it's interesting is that Qualcomm, I mean, you all know it's this large company here in San Diego, but what they were really good at is taking software and then implementing it in their chips, and then basically having OEMs deploy the chips all over globally. And it's a scale that surprised me, right? So then the noise cancellation or the speech enhancement software was then, I think, commercialized in hundreds of millions of phones. I mean, from flip phones to later on smartphones and so on. I think it's still being used. I think they renamed the brand of it and so on, but it's still going to probably hundreds of millions of phones now that have some of the software in there. So that's kind of really interesting to see the scale of what you can achieve once you have a platform where you can scale, right? So after I spent about 12 years at Qualcomm and then joined Samsung Semiconductors actually, and that's where also I saw interestingly what scale means actually, right? So Samsung Semiconductor was scaling, of course, all kinds of memory, like all kinds of semiconductor memory, of course, and then also LSI, similar chips and other things. And I was my team was kind of working on many chips that you're familiar with, such as the Tesla Autopilot chip or some of the other phone chips and other chips that are going into data centers and so on. But what's interesting is then there to see, what it means to scale over again in industries like data centers and cars, which we didn't predict. Like I didn't predict like 30 years ago that AI would be so big now in those domains, right? Of course, now you see it all in the event of NVIDIA and all the chips there and so on. I left Samsung in 2021, end of 21, and started a new company called SoftEye, right? And so the idea with SoftEye was that was really to kind of building the eye for AI, because I kind of had the idea that AI would be coming out very, very, very big. And so the question was, okay, and then by the way, I was working also on ideas that related to glasses, smart glasses. And then the idea was then, what happens if you build the eye that you can put in smart glasses that would then be kind of the interface to the AI in the cloud, right? And in order to make that happen, of course, the cameras have to be always on, meaning drawing very little power because it's the glass, right? But then being able to communicate and interface to the general AI, that was kind of the idea. And so we started in early 22, and then just about 3 months ago, TDK, a big Japanese company, actually bought this company. So now I'm part of TDK, and their vision and also my vision is to kind of combine some of the technologies that they have with our technology to build basically those glasses. So you will probably see in the next few years more of these glasses coming out that will then be really the interface to the big AI, essentially the cloud AI, right? So it's kind of your mouse that's connecting to your PC is now kind of the glass. It's very easy to use for communicating with cloud AI, right? So I mean that's kind of a new scale. I think in the next few years we'll see more of that. I'm pretty excited about it, and I'm also I mean following some of the trends that's happening in computational neuroscience. Happy to hear all the progress that's being done here, and of course the whole exponential scaling of what we're seeing now in AI. I'm actually hoping that people talk about general AI and other things, that this AI will become so useful that it actually gives back to science, right? So essentially giving back to general science, but also, of course, neuroscience and computational neuroscience, of course, right? So I hope that the next few years we'll see a scaling of some of the work that we've done and maybe see a lot of really new applications. So really looking forward to this. Looking forward to continuing to be part of INC and the family here. Thank you.
Thank you, yes. So now, last but not least, Marni Bartlett, who was here at INC, then Emotions, and now Apple. Another exciting story.
Thanks, Gary. Appreciate it. So I saw that I was going to be last, so I quickly threw together some slides to give folks something to look at right before lunch. So I came to INC as a postdoc in 1999. I had just finished a PhD with Terry, and I was interested in facial identity recognition and in learning, what can we take from biological vision to help us understand computational vision for facial identity. So these are cool papers that came out of that. Terry, as my advisor, said, hey, you should really look at this project, this collaboration that I have with Paul Ekman, and start working on that. And it was excellent advice. And so another big part of what I worked on was automating the facial action coding system. And so these are Paul Ekman's images from when he went to Papua New Guinea. I wish you could see the last one. When he went to Papua New Guinea in the early 1960s, and he'd actually gone intending to prove that facial expressions were learned. He was convinced that these were able to processes, go to a literate society. I think it's okay, it's just a smile. So it was a pre-literate society, and he was going to demonstrate that they were learned. And he came away, of course, convinced of universal. And then also there's an illustration of the facial action coding system, which is an objective description of individual movements of facial muscles to enable this kind of research. So it's fine, yeah. The things, yeah. So anyway, our project was automating the facial action coding system using the neural network methods today. Once we got that working, so for my postdoc, I worked with Javier Movion, as well as a really great team of graduate students and postdocs to really get the facial action coding system automated from end to end. And then once we could do that, we could use that to study facial behavior in a way that wasn't possible before. Because before, the only methods we had were either facial EMG, which has its limitations, or manual coding, which was extremely slow. So we started applying it to areas such as mental health, and then in collaborative projects, across both departments and institutions that were fostered by INC. So, and then pain estimation, which Jenny talked about, and so worked on that with Jeannie Wang in the medical school, and also Jenny Dessaw, and that was across institutions as well. And then this was a project, so this is from 2010, but it's a project for intervention for kids with autism. And the idea is that to help train them on facial expression mirroring with empathy and emotional understanding being considered as a closed loop system. And so if you start to engage the visual and the motor system together, and then likewise engage a full circuit to help them understand empathy. And that was part of the TDLC, this work. And then automated tutoring systems was another major area to help adapt automated tutoring systems to understanding nonverbal behavior. And I can't talk about the Machine Perception Lab without mentioning Ruby. So Javier led the work with Ruby the Robot, but we put face tracking and facial expression mirroring in Ruby the Robot to see what that could do to help engage preschool students and bridge the gap between computer tutoring systems and what it's like to interact with the human tutor, what was missing, and get a better understanding of that. So that day that face tracking was implemented in Ruby, and from that day, the kids started having shared attention with Ruby. So in 2011, we developed a startup company, and again, INC supported us and helped us incubate this company. And then we put a demo online, and a venture capitalist saw the demo and decided to give us some venture funding. And so we became Emotions with a new CEO. And we worked on that from about 2011 to 2016, scaling up the automatic facial expression recognition system. And we were pestered by a postdoc to try deep learning, and we eventually gave in. So that was Josh Suskind, who was also an INC postdoc. It was eventually a deep learning system that was acquired by Apple in 2016. So, okay. And then I usually, can't go into very much about what we do at Apple, but I can mention that I have been leading from the Apple side, the digital mental health study with UCLA, where we're looking at facial expression, but also just many multimodal signals that you can collect from the watch and the phone in order to try to make advances in the basic understanding of mental health, of depression and anxiety and stress, because it is an area of health that is very undefined. It doesn't have a set of labs to really well characterize the disorders. So that's what we've been working on. I do want to say that it's a consented study. So we're talking about scale up, and it's certainly exciting to be working in an area where you can reach a lot of people. But this kind of data it's not collected by Apple. It cannot be collected unless people consent to each individual data type for a consented study. And so, yes, we're collaborating. We do have a copy of this, but in general, Apple is not able to collect health data at scale. So it's only in these circumstances. So, yep, so that's what I have for you guys, and it's lunchtime.
Thank you. That was wonderful.